The night carried a sense of inevitability, as if the heavyweight division itself had been holding its breath for years just to arrive at this moment. Mike Tyson versus Evander Holyfield was not simply another title fight. It was the collision of two philosophies, two temperaments, and two legacies that had been moving toward each other since the late 1980s. By the time the opening bell rang, the bout already felt historic, not because of what had happened yet, but because of everything that had led here. Tyson, once the most terrifying force in boxing, was searching for validation, a reminder that the chaos of his past had not permanently stolen his greatness. Holyfield, the disciplined technician with an unbreakable will, was fighting for recognition, for proof that heart, preparation, and intelligence could still overcome raw menace. From the first seconds, the tension was unmistakable. Tyson did not rush in recklessly the way he once might have. There was a noticeable caution in his movement, a sense that he understood the danger standing in front of him. Holyfield, meanwhile, appeared calm, almost serene, as if the storm Tyson represented had already been studied, anticipated, and absorbed into his strategy. When Tyson finally threw his first meaningful punches, they came sharp and fast. A straight right, an early attempt to establish authority. Yet Holyfield did not flinch. He responded with movement, subtle angles, and the kind of composure that immediately sent a message to the crowd, and to Tyson himself. This would not be easy. As the opening exchanges unfolded, it became clear that Holyfield's plan revolved around control rather than chaos. He was willing to engage, but only on his terms. When Tyson tried to get close, Holyfield met him with physical resistance. Tying him up, leaning on him, and disrupting the rhythm Tyson needed to unleash his trademark combinations. Each clinch was deliberate, each separation an opportunity to reset. Tyson slipped and ducked, showing flashes of the defensive instincts that once made him nearly untouchable. But Holyfield's punches, particularly the straight shots, began to find their mark. A left hook here, a clean right hand there, and suddenly, the roar of the crowd shifted in tone. From anticipation to surprise, the first round ended with but with something arguably more important established. Holyfield had shown he could take Tyson's power, and Tyson had learned that Holyfield would not be intimidated. That realization lingered in the air as the fight moved forward. In the second round, Tyson attempted to increase the pressure, digging to the body, trying to impose his strength on the inside. Holyfield absorbed it, rolled with shots, and fired back with precision. The counters were sharp, especially when Tyson missed. Every time Tyson overcommitted, Holyfield was there to make him pay, turning Tyson's aggression into a liability. By the third round, the fight had settled into a grueling rhythm. It was no longer about who could throw the hardest punch, but about who could maintain discipline under fire. Holyfield's strategy was becoming increasingly clear. He was dictating the pace, slowing the fight when necessary, then suddenly accelerating just enough to catch Tyson off balance. Tyson, for all his power, was being forced to think, to adjust, and that alone was draining. Each clinch took something out of him. Each exchange that did not end in a decisive blow chipped away at his confidence. The physicality intensified as the rounds passed. Heads came together, bodies collided, and the inside fighting became brutal. There were moments when Tyson unleashed vicious uppercuts, shots that reminded everyone of his destructive potential. For brief flashes, Holyfield appeared shaken, his legs stiffening, his movement momentarily compromised. But every time Tyson seemed ready to seize control, Holyfield responded with resilience. He answered fire with fire, refusing to retreat, refusing to allow Tyson to sense weakness. That refusal was perhaps the most important element of the fight, because Tyson had built his career on breaking opponents mentally before he ever finished them physically. As the middle rounds unfolded, fatigue began to tell its own story. Tyson's movements grew heavier, his attacks more sporadic. Holyfield, on the other hand, looked increasingly comfortable. He was breathing steadily, his eyes focused, his punches still crisp. The jab, often overlooked in discussions of heavyweight power, became a crucial weapon. Holyfield used it to keep Tyson at just the right distance, to disrupt his timing, and to set up combinations that landed with startling regularity. Straight rights snapped Tyson's head back. Hooks landed as Tyson tried to slip inside. The cumulative effect was unmistakable. There was a moment that stunned the arena, a knockdown that seemed to defy expectations. It was not the kind of dramatic, concussive blow people associated with Tyson's opponents falling. Instead, it came as a surprise, a reminder that balance, timing, and fatigue can be just as decisive as raw force. Tyson went down, more from disorientation than devastation, but the psychological impact was enormous. Holyfield rose in stature in that instant, while Tyson was forced to confront the reality that he was no longer in control of the fight. From that point forward, Holyfield's confidence surged. He began to pick his shots with even greater care, mixing hooks, straight rights, and uppercuts in combinations that flowed effortlessly. Tyson attempted to respond, firing back with what remained of his power, but his punches lacked the snap they once had. He was chasing moments rather than creating them. Holyfield, by contrast, was dictating everything. from the pace to the positioning to the emotional tone of the fight. As the later rounds approached, the narrative shifted from competition to survival. Tyson's legendary explosiveness was fading, replaced by visible exhaustion. His guard dropped more often, his feet slowed. Holyfield saw it and pressed forward, not recklessly, but with the calculated aggression of a champion who senses the end is near. He stepped into punches, absorbed what he had to, and continued to land the cleaner, more damaging shots. Each exchange tilted further in his favor. The decisive sequence came when Holyfield unleashed a barrage that seemed to pour out years of preparation and belief. Punches rained down in rapid succession, hooks and uppercuts blending together as Tyson struggled to defend himself. The crowd erupted, sensing the conclusion before it arrived. Tyson was hurt, clearly so, his body betraying him as Holyfield's combinations found their mark. This was no longer a question of power versus power, but of endurance versus inevitability. The referee watched closely, aware of the responsibility resting on his judgment. Tyson tried to hold on, tried to summon one last surge, but it wasn't there. Holyfield continued to punch with accuracy and purpose. Not wild, not desperate, but relentless. When the stoppage finally came, it felt less like an interruption and more like a confirmation of what had been unfolding for rounds. The fight was over because it had already been decided in spirit, long before the final blows. As Holyfield was declared the new heavyweight champion of the world, the moment carried a weight that extended far beyond the ring. This was not just a victory over Mike Tyson, it was a validation of a career built on discipline, faith, and perseverance. Holyfield had faced doubts, setbacks, and skepticism, yet here he stood, having defeated the most feared man in boxing through intelligence, resilience, and heart. Tyson, meanwhile, was left to reckon with a painful truth. Power alone was no longer enough. The division had evolved, and so had the demands of greatness. In retrospect, the fight stands as a turning point in heavyweight history. It marked the end of Tyson's aura of invincibility and the beginning of Holyfield's legacy as one of the era's defining champions. It was a contest that reminded the world why boxing, at its best, is not merely about violence, but about narrative, about preparation meeting opportunity, about will colliding with reputation, and about the reality that, eventually, every fighter must confront an opponent who cannot be intimidated, cannot be rushed, and cannot be broken. Under the bright lights and relentless scrutiny, Evander Holyfield proved that greatness is not always loud or explosive. Sometimes, it is measured, patient, and unyielding. And in doing so, he etched his name into boxing history, not as a footnote in Mike Tyson's story, but as the author of one of the sport's most defining chapters.